Working the graveyard shift at a lonely highway gas station destroys your sense of time. Hours pass with nothing but empty roads and the constant buzzing of fluorescent lights. I took the job because I needed money badly, and the owner paid cash every week. He was an older man who rarely looked me in the eyes, and on my first night, he gave me a clipboard with a list of rules. Most of the instructions were normal: clean the aisles, refill the coolers, wipe the machines. But one rule immediately stood out. It was written in thick red ink. If a rusted white van arrives at Pump 2 exactly at 3 a.m., give the driver the heavy brass bathroom key, not the plastic one. After he leaves, clean the bathroom floor and never touch the water without gloves. The owner told me to follow the list exactly. He said the cameras recorded everything, and I shouldn't worry. I thought it was strange. But I needed the money, so I stayed behind the bulletproof glass and waited for my first night alone to begin. The van appeared on my third night. The headlights cut through the darkness and stopped beside Pump 2. The engine sounded broken. The entire vehicle was covered in rust, the windows were black and impossible to see through. Then the driver stepped out and slowly walked toward the transaction window. The moment I saw him, something felt wrong. His skin was pale and gray, his hair was soaked as if he had just crawled out of a river, and every step left wet footprints on completely dry pavement. When he reached the window, the smell of dirty water and mud filled the room. "I need the key," he said. I reached under the counter and grabbed the heavy brass key. His fingers were wrinkled and damaged like they had been underwater for hours. He never looked at me. He only took the key and walked toward the bathroom. I watched the security monitor as he unlocked the door and disappeared inside. Exactly 15 minutes later, he returned, placed the key back in the tray, and walked to his van without saying anything. Then he drove away into the darkness. I grabbed the rubber gloves, filled the bucket, and entered the bathroom. The moment I opened the door, I understood why the rule existed. The entire floor was covered with dark, dirty water. It smelled like mud and something much worse. I cleaned everything carefully and made sure my hands never touched the water. After that, the same thing happened every night, 3 a.m. The van arrived, the driver took the key, 15 minutes later he left, and I cleaned the flooded bathroom. After a few weeks, it almost became normal. The impossible became routine. I stopped asking questions, I stopped being scared. Until one rainy night when I noticed something inside the water that changed everything. That night the rain was heavy, and the van arrived exactly at 3 a.m. like always. The driver took the key and disappeared into the bathroom. After 15 minutes he left and I prepared to clean the floor, but when I opened the door I noticed something strange. The water looked different, darker than usual. I pushed the mop through the dirty water and something solid hit the floor. At first I thought it was just trash, but when I looked closer, I saw long strands of green river weeds mixed with broken pieces of wood and rusted metal. The smell was stronger than ever and my stomach turned. I cleaned the bathroom faster than I ever had before, trying not to think about what I found. But after returning behind the counter, I couldn't stop thinking about it. What was the driver doing inside that room every night? And where did that water come from? For the first time I opened the camera recordings. I wanted to see exactly what happened after the driver entered the bathroom. The footage showed him walking inside, the door closing behind him, and then nothing. I waited for the door to open. 15 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. But the bathroom door never moved. I checked the camera outside. The van was still there. Then at exactly 15 minutes, the screen glitched. When the picture returned, the bathroom door was still closed, but the van was gone. It had disappeared in the same second. No driving away, no headlights, nothing. Just gone. I tried to convince myself there was a logical explanation, but I couldn't ignore what I saw. I grabbed the brass key, took a flashlight, and walked outside into the storm. I needed to know what was really inside that bathroom. The room looked normal at first, just a small bathroom with old tiles. But when I looked closer, I noticed something strange under the sink. Hidden beneath years of dirt was a small metal plate with a keyhole. The brass key fit perfectly. I turned it and heard a loud click beneath the floor. Then the metal plate moved, revealing a dark opening underneath the bathroom. A wave of disgusting air rushed up from below. I pointed my flashlight into the hole and saw a ladder leading down into a hidden underground room. The entire place was flooded with dark water, and floating on the surface were old bags, suitcases, and broken objects. Then I saw them, bones, dozens of them, human remains mixed with river plants and mud. I couldn't move. My mind refused to accept what I was seeing until a loud knock came from the bathroom door behind me. I froze. I was alone inside the bathroom. I slowly turned toward the door, but nobody was there. The rain was still hitting the roof. Everything was silent, until I heard a wet dragging sound behind me. A heavy boot pressed against the tile floor, slow and dripping. I turned around with the flashlight shaking in my hand, and standing there was the driver. But he looked completely different now. His body was swollen and rotten, dirty water poured from his mouth. His skin looked like it had been underwater for years. He lifted his hand toward me and started walking closer. I couldn't move. My body was frozen with fear. The driver stopped a few steps away from me and stared with empty eyes. Then he pointed toward the hidden room beneath the floor, like he wanted me to look at something. I didn't understand what he wanted, but I knew I needed to leave. I ran out of the bathroom and locked the door behind me. I grabbed my phone and called the owner immediately. He answered after only one ring, almost like he was waiting for my call, and when I started explaining what I saw, he went silent. For a few seconds there was nothing but static. Then he finally spoke. His voice sounded tired, like someone who had been carrying a secret for too long. He told me to stay inside the station, turn off the lights, and never go near the bathroom again. I asked him what the driver was, but he didn't answer directly. He only said that the highway wasn't always there, and before the gas station was built, there was a river running through that land. According to him, many years ago people disappeared near that river. Nobody knew why. Some believed they drowned. Others believed something lived in the water. But eventually the river was covered and forgotten. The gas station was built on top of it, and strange things started happening. Every night at exactly 3 a.m., the same van appeared, and every night the bathroom filled with water from the old river below. I wanted to quit immediately, but the owner told me something worse. He said everyone who worked there before me tried to leave after discovering the truth, but the driver always came back one final time. And if they didn't follow the rules, the driver didn't leave alone. I spent the rest of the night sitting behind the counter with every light turned on, waiting for sunrise, but the storm outside kept getting stronger. At exactly 3 a.m. the next night, the van returned. But this time, something was different. The driver didn't park at Pump 2. He stopped directly in front of the store entrance, blocking the door. The headlights were so bright I couldn't see outside. Then the transaction window slowly opened, even though I hadn't touched it, and the driver's voice came from the darkness outside. "I need the key." I looked at the brass key sitting under the counter. I knew I shouldn't give it to him. Every part of my body was screaming to run, but then I noticed something written on the metal tag attached to it. A name, my name. I stepped back, confused and terrified because I had never seen that tag before. The driver knocked on the glass again, harder this time, and the lights inside the station started flickering. Then the bathroom door behind me unlocked by itself, slowly opening, revealing darkness inside, and from that darkness came the sound of water dripping onto the floor. I looked toward the bathroom and saw wet footprints appearing one by one, moving from the doorway toward me, but nobody was there. Only the sound of someone walking through water. The owner had warned me not to open that door again, but the footsteps stopped right in front of me, and the silence that followed felt worse than the sound. Then I heard a voice behind me. A voice I recognized. A voice that belonged to someone who had worked at the station before me. "Don't give him the key." I turned around and saw an old employee photo hanging on the wall. The picture showed the workers from years ago, and one of the faces looked exactly like the person who had just spoken. The face in the photo belonged to the man who was standing behind me. The same man who disappeared years ago. The same man who was now warning me not to give away the key. I looked back toward the entrance, but the driver was still there, waiting patiently in the darkness. The owner called me again. His voice was shaking this time. He told me the truth he had hidden for years. The driver wasn't a person anymore. He was something left behind by the old river, something that collected what belonged to it. Every night it came back for the key because the key was the only thing keeping the river trapped beneath the station. If the key was given away, whatever was below would finally be free. I asked him why he never destroyed the key, why he kept sending workers here knowing what would happen, and his answer was worse than I expected. Because the key didn't just lock the river away, it also protected the town. Without someone keeping the rules, the water would rise again, and everything nearby would disappear. The driver knocked again. The glass started cracking. The bathroom behind me was filling with water. Dark water slowly spreading across the floor, moving toward my shoes. I grabbed the key and ran to the back room, searching for somewhere to hide, but every door was locked. Every exit was blocked, like the station itself didn't want me to leave. Then I saw something written on the wall behind the shelves. Old words scratched into the paint, written by someone who worked here before me. Never let him take the key. Under the message were dozens of names, employees who had worked at the station over the years. Some names were crossed out, others were still visible. And at the bottom of the list was a blank space, waiting for a new name. My name. The lights went out completely. The station became silent. I could hear only the sound of water moving closer. I held the key tightly and waited for something to happen. Then the bathroom door opened. The driver stepped inside, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him came shadows moving through the water, shapes that looked almost human. The driver pointed at the key and spoke again. "Give it back!" I asked him one question. Who were all those people in the water? And for the first time, he answered. They forgot to leave. The shadows moved closer, and I realized those weren't monsters. They were the people who worked here before me, the people who failed to follow the rules. The old employee in the photo was among them. His face was tired, his body covered in river plants, but he was still trying to help me. He pointed toward the hidden room below the bathroom, telling me without words what I needed to do. I understood. The key wasn't meant to be given to the driver. It was meant to be used one last time. I ran into the bathroom, jumped over the dark water, and climbed down into the underground chamber beneath the station. The air below was freezing. The walls were covered in old scratches and handprints, thousands of marks from people who had been trapped there. In the middle of the room was an old rusted door, and behind it I could hear the sound of rushing water, like an entire river was waiting on the other side. The brass key started moving in my hand by itself, pulling toward the lock, almost like something below wanted me to open it. I knew opening that door could destroy everything, but leaving it closed meant the driver would keep returning forever. Then I noticed something carved into the door, a warning. Only the last keeper can decide. And suddenly I understood why the key had my name on it. The station didn't choose random workers. It was choosing someone to replace the person before them. I stood there holding the key, realizing there was no way back. The station had chosen me because someone needed to keep the door closed. Someone needed to protect the world outside from whatever was waiting below. The water around my feet started rising. The voices from the shadows became louder, hundreds of whispers filling the room. Some were angry, some were scared, and some were begging me to open the door. I ignored them and looked at the lock. My hands were shaking, but I pushed the key inside. The moment it turned, the entire underground room started shaking. The door opened slightly, and a wave of freezing water rushed toward me. But instead of escaping, it stopped, like something on the other side was waiting to see what I would do. Then I heard a voice from the darkness, not the driver, not the shadows, something much deeper. It asked me why I wanted to keep the door closed. It told me the people above had forgotten the river, forgotten what they built on top of it, forgotten all the lives lost there. For a second, I almost believed it. Because maybe it was right. Maybe the town deserved to remember. Maybe the truth should finally come out. But then I looked at the walls, at the names of all the people who disappeared, and I realized something. The river wasn't asking for justice. It was asking for more. I pulled the key out and slammed the door shut. The entire room screamed, the water exploded around me, and the shadows rushed toward me. I climbed back up as fast as I could. The driver was waiting in the bathroom, standing in the dark water. But this time he looked different. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked relieved. He stepped aside and let me pass. Then he walked toward the underground door and disappeared below, taking the shadows with him. The bathroom became completely dry. The old smell vanished, and for the first time since I started working there, the station felt normal. The next morning, the owner arrived. He looked at me and immediately knew what happened. He didn't ask questions, he just handed me an envelope. Inside was a new contract, better pay, fewer rules, and one final note. Some people guard places, some places guard people. I still work there today, I still work the night shift, and every morning at 3 a.m. I watch the road carefully. Sometimes I see headlights in the distance. Sometimes I see a rusted white van slowly approaching, and every time my heart stops for a moment. But the van never stops anymore. The driver never comes back, at least not yet. Because last night when I checked the bathroom floor after my shift, I found a single wet footprint, pointing toward the exit, not coming inside, leaving